Hey, good evening, everyone. When it rains, the sky is overcast. This rainy night talk is about such times. Today I'm going to talk about a particularly interesting thing. Who am I? Don't laugh. This is not a philosophy class. If one day someone looks exactly like you, then who is who between you two? By the way, in a town with a particularly beautiful view, there's a new resident called GIs. This man is usually not very talkative, nor does he like to chat with his neighbors, but he is polite to everyone and has a smiling face. But in this peaceful town, one day, sirens blared and more than a dozen armed police officers arrived, and with a crash they surrounded Guy's house. A fat police officer with a megaphone shouted, "People in the house, put your hands on your head and come out." No sooner had he finished speaking than the door opened and Gishin, with his hands on his head, came out obediently. The police were on high alert, first searching to make sure there were no dangerous items. Then the fat officer, Sheriff Henry, sized him up and down and said, "What's your name?" "My name is Jess," said Jess. Sheriff Henry chuckled and said, "You act quite well, but you're not Geese. You're Fugitive Natel. Guess what?" After hearing this, Geese was not flustered at all. He smiled slightly and shrugged his shoulders, saying, "Sir Sheriff, you are mistaken. That Tell is my brother, and I am his elder brother. We are not alone." Sheriff Henry was stunned at the moment and said, "But why do you look exactly like him?" Jess laughed and said, "We are twin brothers, exactly the same from the womb. Not to mention the appearance, we speak and walk alike." But he changed the subject and said, "There's only one difference between us. He's a wanted man, and I'm a law-abiding citizen. Hey, look, isn't that a trick? What do police rely on to handle cases? To a large extent, it depends on witnesses, that is, I saw it. But now the question is, did you see the elder brother or the younger brother? The two are exactly the same from hair to heels. What is this legally called? This is called a reasonable doubt that cannot be ruled out. You simply can't identify." Just then, the police who had entered the house to search came out and said there was nothing suspicious in the house. The two brothers' plans are too elaborate. One goes out, and the other hides in the house. And look at this GIs who has moved into this small town and is polite to everyone, but just doesn't get close. Why? This is not a reclusive personality. This is the most fatal part of their plan. Think about it. If he plays cards and drinks with his neighbors every day, over time people will notice some subtle differences. He's trying to portray himself as a vague, good guy with little social detail, so that he and his brother take turns playing the role and no one can spot any flaws. Sheriff Henry could do nothing about it, but he was an old policeman and his intuition told him something was wrong. So he pulled out a wanted notice with Natel's fingerprints and said, "Words don't work. I'll check your fingerprints. This GI's has a good mental quality. Just think, with dozens of guns at you, he doesn't change his face, doesn't get nervous, and actively coax with you, immediately stretching out his right hand. This composure is enough to convince most of the police." The sheriff grabbed his hand, looked at the fingerprints on the wanted notice, and finally let out a deep sigh. It doesn't match. Evidence has the final say. If fingerprints don't match, even if you doubt it, you have to follow the rules. Just say, "Sorry, I made a mistake," and slunk away. Before leaving, GIs deliberately added that he hoped the police would catch his heinous brother as soon as possible, and that he could not pervert justice for personal gain. Hey, that's a good word. What is he doing? He was trying to get close to the police, putting himself on the side of the good guys and reinforcing his image of innocence in a high-profile manner, which made the police feel a little embarrassed about the suspicion just now. When the police left, GIs went back into the house, closed the door, looked through the window crack for a long time, and finally left seriously before opening the closet and clapping his hands. Another man who was exactly the same came out of the inner partition wall, and that was the real fugitive, that Tell. It turns out that a year ago, the two brothers robbed the cash transport vehicle and killed someone. It was planned from the very beginning that the younger brother would commit the crime in the open and the elder brother would support him in the dark, and then they would play the trick of two as one by taking advantage of their looks. They celebrated the victory, and Natter said he was going outside to get some fresh air and enjoy the sunshine. But while Natel was sitting on the lawn smoking a cigar, Sheriff Henry came back with his men. Nathaniel was startled, but soon calmed down. Why? Because he had just been in the darkroom and had seen and heard clearly what was happening outside through his brother's miniature eavesdropping device and peeping equipment. He thought he had all the information and was so smug that he greeted the sheriff and acted exactly like Geist just now. But he forgot that while the mantis is catching the cicada, the oriole is behind it. His little trick happened to fall into the big pit that the sheriff had dug for him. Oh dear, Mr. GIs, I'm really sorry. When I go back and report to our chief, that scoundrel has been cursing me to death, saying I'm not careful and insisting that I take your fingerprints back as well. He wants to check it himself. You guys look at the words, how good they are. He didn't say, I doubt you. He said, my stupid director doesn't believe me. All of a sudden, he put himself on the same side as this GI's. The conflict shifted from police versus suspect to the two of us versus that unreasonable bureaucratic boss. Now, that Tell is in a difficult position. Who is he playing now? It's the law-abiding citizen GIs. A good citizen, in the face of a police officer on duty, even if he thinks the request is a bit stupid, what can he do? He can only complain. Is it necessary? He cooperated helplessly, because that's how a good citizen should react. If he refuses firmly, I won't press, then the nature changes. For an innocent person, what's so scary about fingerprinting? Do you have something to hide in your mind? So you see, when he refuses, it's exposed. He doesn't refuse, and he's exposed. What's that called? This is called luring you into a trap. There was no way out of the trap Sheriff Henry had set for him. With a cold sweat on his face, he struggled and said, Can I refuse? Sheriff Henry spread his hands and said that the law requires citizens to cooperate with the police, or else they will be arrested for obstructing official duties. He was completely at a loss. A few police officers went up and grabbed him on the right hand and pressed a new fingerprint right next to the wanted notice with his own fingerprint. Sheriff Henry picked it up and saw that the two fingerprints were exactly the same. He shouted at once, "Handcuff him!" You see, after more than a year of meticulous planning, digging up the wall and performing the double act, thinking it was flawless, what was the result? Just because of this light stroke, all the disguises, all the cleverness crumbled in an instant. The whole plan of the two brothers is betting on one thing. Human eyes can deceive. You look alike, but you can't tell. But they miscalculated one step. The human eye can deceive, but science can't. That tiny fingerprint, it doesn't lie. All your schemes are built on a castle on the beach, which looks beautiful, but leaves nothing when the tide of truth comes. That tiny fingerprint is the tide of truth. So, well, this story tells us that you can deceive everyone, but you can't deceive yourself. Your fingerprints are your unique proof of identity, and they don't lie. Back to the question we started with, who am I? Didn't the twin brothers end up being stumped by this question? A single fingerprint gave them their true colors. In this rainy night, all is quiet, and it's easiest to see oneself. Well, that's all for today's story in our rainy night chat. Let's talk about it next time.